Hey everyone, it's David Bombal coming to you from Cisco Live in Barcelona. Really happy to introduce you to Katherine. Now, this is the first time I've met Katherine. In person, yes, that's a good point. I saw her post something on LinkedIn, and she's got a really nice story that I'd like to share. But Katherine, you introduce yourself properly.
Hi, I'm Katherine McNamara. I work at Cisco as a cybersecurity systems engineer, and I also co-organize a large study group for Cisco study group called Router God. So if you ever look on meetup.com, it's on there as well. And I have a blog called networknode.com or network-node.com.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some of your articles. They're really good. But the one I want to start with today is you got to tell me the story, because I saw you post on LinkedIn that 10-year thing, where 10 years ago, and I don't want to spoil it, you'll have to go through this, the detailed explanation of how you went from where you were 10 years ago to where you are today.
Yeah, no problem. So I was in my mid-20s at the time, and I was working entry-level customer service type jobs, and I always knew I wanted to get into IT. Computers were a thing I was really into, like all through high school, but I always thought that you'd have to get a computer science degree. I was horrible at math, and it was one of those things that like life got in the way, and I just didn't go to school. And sometime around that time I was like 25, 26, the 2008 crash happened, and I was kind of at the end of my limit as far as life was concerned. Like I didn't have a place to live. I was couch crashing. I didn't have a car at first. Ended up working like a $12 an hour job to get the crappiest car possible that would break down like every other week. And
you were homeless basically.
Yeah, pretty much. I like a couple of weeks I was actually homeless, but then I found a friend who would let me couch crash. And then I went in for a customer service job interview, and I had mentioned that I wanted to get into school for IT, and the owner of this company, small company, was like, "Okay, I'm not going to hire you for customer service. I'm going to hire you to help our IT manager." And it wasn't a great paying job. It was like $12.50 an hour. I live in California, which is one of the most expensive, and LA area, so it's one of the most expensive places in the US. And so $12.50 an hour was basically like you barely get a rent to pay and like a room for rent, and I had no extra money. So what I ended up doing is I was like, okay, if I'm getting this experience and I'm gonna have the chance to do something and like get into the career I want, obviously I can't move up that far here, so I need to study and learn more. So the only way to do that was to get a second job, and I ended up getting a second job as a security guard, which offers somewhat flexible hours at nighttime. So I was literally working 8 to 5, driving home to crashing from 6 to 10, going back to work from 11 to 7 as a security guard.
Like the whole night, yeah?
Yeah, but the good thing was, even though it wasn't a high-paying job, it was gave me time to study. So I got through my A+, my Network Plus, and my Security Plus all through that year, and I ended up saying, okay, I've learned everything I can at this day job, and it's just getting exhausting working 80 hours a week, so I'm going to try to see if I can get to the next level. So I ended up applying for like a contract position that was opening up at a hospital system near me, and I ended up getting like doubling my pay instantly, and they would actually offer tuition reimbursement. So I was.
What certification did you have when you got that job?
Just the 3 I mentioned, but I was starting a study like my MCSE, and since they offered tuition reimbursement, I was like, I found an online school that basically was below the tuition reimbursement amount, and they offered free certifications with their degree. So I started studying, and it was like an IT security degree, so it had a lot of like security-centric certifications. So while I was studying in school, like one of the last classes was a CCNA class, which also included getting certified at the end. And I fell in love with networking at that point. I was like gung-ho on security, but I also fell in love with networking. So I was like, okay, I'll give this a try. I'm actually pretty good at it, at least labbing it up. And so the next job, after I was done with my degree, I got done with it in record time. I was basically like, let's find a contracting job that'll just give me experience like with solid networking. So I jumped into that a job that also doubled my salary at that point.
Wow.
So it was even better. And I got my hands on everything. I got my hands on security, wireless. The amazing thing was it was an all-you-can-eat buffet of learning, as long as like you're willing to do it. And that company was just like, oh, somebody wants to take over our wireless? Okay. You want to learn ICE? Okay.
Wow.
So I kind of jumped into the deep end of the pool, and even though like I felt like I had imposter syndrome the whole first 6 months, I think that the reason why they hired me and the reason why I did so well is not because I sat there and tried to inflate my credentials. I didn't say, oh, I'm going into this knowing everything, but I was like, look, you give me something to learn, I will study, I will take the extra time and learn. And I think that in my time since then, it's been a lot of years, but since then, when it comes to like interviewing people, because I'm at the exact opposite where I actually help my boss interview people for technical roles now, I don't look at as much at experience anymore. I look at, is that person willing to learn? Because you can't train ambition. And that's what my first network engineer boss saw in me. And then every job I've taken since then, until even to the network security role that I'm in now as a cybersecurity engineer, I think that the fact that I've always been willing to learn is always something that kind of makes anyone stand out. And for anyone who's actually watching this, that's the thing. Like, if you get into a job interview, don't try to inflate what you know. I would always say, look, this is how much I know. If someone asked me a technical question that I didn't know, I would go home after the interview and email them after I researched it, because it shows that I'm actually willing to take that extra step.
Great advice,
yeah, and if you show that you're actually just like, look, this is how far I've gotten so far, I just need experience, you'd be amazed how many employers would be willing to give you a chance.
That's amazing. So I'm a bit slow, so let me get this right. You were working a day job, then you were doing security at night. I think you said in your post you were sleeping 4 hours a night or something crazy, and you were losing a lot of weight because you weren't eating properly, stuff like that?
Yeah, it was at that point in time, I was only able to afford probably like 2 meals a day. So it was always like the dollar menu at Del Taco. And if I don't know if you guys have Del Taco out here.
No.
It's like the cheaper version of Taco Bell. So it's pretty bad. And so I was barely making it, but like it was like a rough year, but it was worth it in the end, because sometimes you have to kind of put some sacrifice forward to get what you want out of life. And I know that some people don't have that option of working 2 jobs. Honestly, I feel for people who have like kids or a spouse and they're not able to do the same thing. At that point, I would say, I kind of like try to beast mode and do as much as I could in a consolidated period of time. But if you don't have that opportunity to work extra hours, what I would say is get involved in communities like online study groups. It's not always easy if you're working a non-IT job, or even sometimes when you're working an IT job, to find people who will encourage you to study more and learn more, even get certified. And the reality is, if you kind of put yourself around the kind of if you surround yourself with the people that will motivate you, you find you work harder and you get more motivated. And that's kind of what I always try to do in both my business, social life, and even when I'm working. I try to surround myself by positive influences. And honestly, I love it when I work with people smarter than me, because there's always something like I can learn off of them.
Exactly. So you've got to give me that tagline again. You can't train ambition, I think is what you said.
That's true. Yeah, you definitely can't train ambition. I've met a lot of people who've been like in the industry for like 20 years, and they think they know everything, or they've learned as much as they want, and they're at this point they're on cruise control. And then I've met people who have been, they're basically at that point they don't have 20 years of experience. They have 1 year of experience 20 times. And then I've met people who have 5 years of experience, but they've learned so much more than the people I've met, who've had experience for 10 years. So it really, experience is important, having that on your resume, but at the same time, it's not everything.
No.
It's what you did with that experience.
Yeah. I really like that. I did a video about experience is overrated. I mean, I've been in this game a long time. I remember learning about ISDN circuits. all the old stuff that's kind of irrelevant today. And I like what you said, that 5 years of experience could be 1 year repeated. Did you want to say something, sorry?
No, I was going to say, it's not only that technology changes, but it's the fact that, like, in our industry, even job titles are so fluid. Like, I've seen people who do, like they architect like great networks and build them, and they have like a network admin role. And then I see people sometimes with network architect roles who do nothing but paperwork all day. Yeah. So it really it's not as important with job title. It's what you're doing, your day job, and how much you're learning with it, and if you're actually willing to learn. That's why, like, somebody who's eager to learn and willing to like hit the ground running, even if they have no, like, if they're just a CCNA, if I feel like that they have that kind of ambition that they're just going to take as much, like they're going to learn as much as they can, then I'm more willing to give them a chance than somebody who's like, yeah, I know everything, I don't need to learn anything else.
So I mean, that's brilliant. So I wanted to ask you two things, and let's hopefully we'll have enough time. Is like you hiring people, and you gave some tips for hiring. Do you have any more tips for someone who if they want to go for a job interview, what are you looking for? What would you advise?
So I only do the technical part of the
That's
interviews.
fine.
I'm not a technically a manager, but I help out with my management for that, and for the last like couple jobs. I honestly look for someone who looks like they're going to enjoy the job, not someone who thinks that it's like slave labor and something that they have to do. Someone who feels passionate about technology, that ambition, that they love learning, that they got into this because this is something they truly want to do, not just because they're trying to. I mean, pay is important, and obviously you would if you respect your employees, you pay them a good salary, but not somebody who's just kind of like looking to make $1 more an hour, and that's the only reason they're making the jump. And honestly, you don't see it as much. You usually see people who have a lot of credentials, but maybe they, when you start quizzing them on it, or you like start whiteboarding, like you see very quickly that there's huge gaps in their knowledge. And then I meet some other people who have like less certifications than those like senior folks, but they've retained it all because they're always practicing and they're always labbing. They're always trying to keep it fresh in their mind.
Yeah, that's something else I saw on one of your, I think on your blog, I think, where you say keep on labbing, keep labbing, because you do a lot of labs.
Yeah, partly because it's actually important for my job, but even then, like, even when I made this jump to like Cisco, I kind of told myself, like, I don't want to get rusty technically. Like, I always find ways to get hands-on and put myself in front of the technologies, because to me it's I'm not looking to get into a management position, and for me it's like it gives me the most options to keep that stuff fresh in my head. But even if I wasn't at Cisco, like I don't necessarily need to lab the stuff that's like antiquated or out of date, but like it's good to at least have that understanding of the technology, because you never know when you're going to it's like a Swiss Army knife. You never know when you're going to need that technology to pull out of your pocket and fix a problem or solve a business objective.
I think it's fantastic advice. I mean, to me, like just listening to you, it's amazing. I think you got 2 CCIEs now?
Yeah, CCIE Security and CCIE Data Center. One day, probably route and switch as well, but I promised my spouse I would take a break, so it was like 4 years of like solid studying for both those, to get both of those CCIEs. But when it comes to like studying, like any certification I got, I just kind of dug in and labbed it up, tried, and if I could apply it to my job, I would, but I wouldn't just arbitrarily try to fit a square peg in a round hole. But as I found like myself studying, it made me a better engineer. That first networking job I can think of, like I went in as a CCNA, and I studied for my CCNP during the while I was studying for the job, and I learned about EM applets, and there was like ended up being a problem that I could solve with it, and I was like, oh, this is great, like here's how I would do it. I labbed it up. I used like GNS3, or anyone likes using EVNG, that's also another free emulator out there that you can use as well. But like just being able to replicate it, or like physical labs as well. DMVPN is also one, like where I was learning about it, studying about it on the side, and then suddenly like our CIO came to us that we needed like redundancy at every site, and how would we achieve this, and like DMVPN actually fit the objectives. So just being able to like learn and pick things up like that, and seeing how it can work to fix a business or technical problem is pretty fascinating, and always was fun to me.
I'm so glad to be able to speak to you. I mean, it's just great to hear stories like this, and I hear a lot of them. This is a fantastic story. So let's switch gears. I had a lot of questions about security, and I'm not a CCIE in security. I'm route switch. So a lot of you were asking about, is security a good job? Is there a future being a security engineer? How should you study for security? So do you want to just talk about that? What would you recommend?
So as far as security is concerned, yes, it's a really good job to get right now. There's a lot of avenues in security, though. So be aware, there's everything from like the regulatory audit perspective. There's pen testing. There's network security. There's a lot of avenues. That whole cybersecurity broad field it covers like multiple career paths. Now the thing is, I know about the United States a little bit more, but with the U.S. there's a negative unemployment rate in terms of like jobs, cybersecurity jobs in most IT hubs. So there's a lot of growth in there, and I think that with more regulation and the cost of breaches and more bad actors out there, that field's going to grow. Now the thing I would say is, there's not just one way to jump into it. Like, you don't have to go get a computer science degree and learn programming and like disseminate malware to get into cybersecurity. You could also get into network security. You can get into pen testing. It just varies wildly. What I would say is to look into the different IT security jobs that are out there, like what branch that seems most interesting, that you could see yourself doing for 20 years, and then start chasing after the things that would get you in there. There's a lot of also like security conferences out there where you can meet like-minded folks. If you wanted to go to like more of the professional one, there's professional ones. There's like RSA. There's security meetups like all around the country. Like if you look at meetup.com, you can just look for like InfoSec or like IT security meetings. You'll probably find them in any major city near you. If you're looking for like some of more of the black hat type of stuff, like DEF CON is really cheap to go to if you can get to Las Vegas. It's one of the biggest hacker conventions in the world, and there's both professionals and bad people there. It's a mix. The only advice I'd say is if you're going to go there, turn off your cell phone, don't turn on Wi-Fi on your laptop, turn off all Bluetooth items, and if you have any pacemakers or insulin pumps that have Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, steer clear of the biohacking village.
Wow.
But there's a lot of good professionals there. The funny thing is, the guy who introduced me to Cisco wanted to get me hired. I met him at DEF CON originally.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He was in line with me for like the badge, and I was like, I saw his black hat.
In line with you.
Yeah, I saw his black hat bag, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like it was like a really cool one that year. And he ended up giving me his card, and I added him on LinkedIn, and we stayed in touch over the years.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, if you just network, opportunities come.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're not at a company, I would say print out business cards and like distribute them at those meetings, because like add people on LinkedIn, use those professional social medias to try to increase your reach. Try to interact with them and or comment on their posts appropriately, of course, but it's a good way to kind of get your name out there and get people when they have openings show up, and also chart your progress. Like, hey, I just passed the CCIE or CCNA security, things like that, so people get to see that you're progressing, and those people that you meet up with, if they have an opening that they might need someone to fill, they'll see that you've been progressing and that you're looking.
I mean, that's great advice. I mean, like you're talking about like updating your LinkedIn profile, stuff like that, so people know that you're getting ahead, you're not just stagnant. Okay, so let's talk about Cisco. I believe the CCIE security exam changed about a year ago or something.
Like a year and a half ago.
Yep. So can you talk us through the certifications? Sorry, with the one mic story, but can you talk us through the certifications, and do you have any recommendations of how someone should tackle that, like CCNA, CCNB, CCIE? Very hard questions, but...
So I believe the CCNA Security has a book out for it now. So they updated it recently. When I took the CCIE Security, or when I started studying for it, the CCNA Security was actually still out of date. So I was like, I'm skipping this, whatever. But they actually updated it while I was studying for the IE Security. So I don't know if there's books out there for all the CCNA Security, unfortunately. So it's it's you might have to like kind of mix, and my advice is when studying for certifications in general, try to mix vendors or mix content, because like for me, I've never read one book and just was able to pass an exam. I've had to use videos, Udemy videos, INE. Like I had to mix my content up, because there's no way that like one book had it all. Even if it's the official one, I've seen that it doesn't usually cover everything.
You said that, because that was one of the comments.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, like I couldn't even. I had to read like 3 different books for CCNA route, or CCNP route. So. It's true, and it's kind of like how they separate duties. Like they have the people that are writing the content, and they have the people producing the exams. Yeah. And there's certain regulatory reasons why they can't mix, because they can't. So they only see the objectives as they're laid out, and sometimes it's kind of up to the author how much they're going to dig into it in a book. So my advice is, if you're trying to really learn it, try to reinforce with like some other material, whether it's like a video, like a really in-depth video series, or another book. That usually worked for me.
That's great.
And as far as CCIE security is concerned, any CCIE, if you do decide to go into to get a CCIE, just going to tell you right now, one vendor or one book is not going to cut it. It's CCIEs are kind of like. Here's the CCNA, and then here's the CCNP, and then here's the CCIE of how much studying you have to do. So it's usually like anywhere from like 10 to 20 books, videos, 1,000 hours of labbing. So just be prepared for that if you decide to go for a CCIE. And if you have a spouse, spouse buy-in is like required.
Very much so.
And expect that probably every day it's going to be like 3 to 5 hours of studying, at least.
So, I mean, fantastic story, and thanks so much for sharing advice with all of us.
That scared everyone out of the
No, not at all. I think your advice is brilliant. So, in your journey, have you got any like parting thoughts or wisdom or things that you've learned that you wish you'd known 10 years ago? Hard one.
I do wish I had known where I was. I think this is everybody wishes like they had started earlier. I wish I had known that like I could have gotten an IT degree or worked my way up on certifications, instead of like sitting from like the age of 18 to like 26, 25 and not really progressing. I think I was really discouraged because I grew up in the 90s in Silicon Valley, and like CS degrees were like pretty much the big thing. And I got really discouraged thinking that I had to have a computer science degree, and since I suck at math, I was pretty much like SOL. But I wish I'd started earlier, and I think there's a lot of certifications I took along the way. Part of it was for school, part of it was because like I arbitrarily thought that like you had to know this stuff. And I realized that like if I could have probably saved myself a lot of effort and money if I'd been a little bit more concise and like knew where I was going. But it's kind of like asking a kid or somebody like and expecting them to know what they wanted to be when they grow up. Sometimes career paths change and you can't really predict it. So I don't beat myself up so much for that. Yeah. But I do wish I had like started earlier. But I wonder where I would have been if I had like had 10 more years on this.
Exactly. So Katherine, tell me about Router Guards, because you're quite heavily involved in that. What is it, and like, what is it about? And I think there's some interesting things that you do there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not the group that I started. It actually was started by Humphrey Chung. He's in the group, and he's our benevolent dictator, as we call him. But it's a free community that basically like a large study group, and everything from Cisco certifications, Microsoft, VMware, whatever. It's all it's just a community that we try to give back to, train people as much as we can. But we also do job advice. If someone goes into our job and career chat and basically posts their resume with personal information redacted, we'll go ahead and like review and give advice. We also do mock interviews. If anyone has a job open at their company that they're looking for, we'll post in there as well. So a lot of people have gotten jobs through Router Gods. We also we've also try to network between each other. So if there's a lot of like cross training and cross jobs in there. Like we've had people leave from one member's company to another. So it's pretty interesting. But if anyone wanted to join, there's never a cost or anything associated. And we also try to do like things to give back to like newer people in the industry. So one of the things we started doing like a couple of years ago is we start a GoFundMe every year, and we basically say, okay, we're gonna let the community vote for somebody who doesn't have a CCIE and doesn't work at Cisco, and they're gonna donate to this and basically give someone the opportunity who's never been to Cisco Live and new in the field to go there. And it's optional, but we've sent a couple people to Cisco Live over the last couple of years who've just to network and like try to get a job in the field. So just kind of things that we do as part of Router Gods. We do it on our free time, but since we have like over 2,000 members, a lot of people jump in and help each other out. We have everything from like people who are still working help desk to like people who have like 3 or 4 CCIEs.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thanks so much for sharing that. How can people connect with you or follow you? Have you got Twitter? Can you just list social media or where people can find you?
Yeah, if you go to network-node.com, my Twitter's linked on there, my LinkedIn as well. And then if you go to meetup.com/Router Gods, we have a study group. It's for everyone from like pre-CCNA to CCIE. We do meetups. We sometimes have trainers do like free boot camps. We have a YouTube video, and we also have a chat where we all like interact and do like hangout and like labbing and stuff.
Katherine, I want to really thank you so much. This was done really quickly. So everyone, I again just want to thank Katherine for sharing her wisdom. And I mean, what a story. No, it was great. It was great. It's, stories like this are so inspirational. So again, thanks so much. All the very best.